So I've been catching up on my Mary Roach books. She's a science writer with an attitude, and I love her attitude and her snark. And she wrote Stiff, which I read a long time ago, and Packing for Mars and Packing for Mars for Kids. And the two books that I just read of hers are Fuzz, which is When Nature Breaks the Law, and I learned about danger trees. I didn't know there was such a thing as danger trees. There are danger trees.
There are danger trees. They are very much dangerous, too.
Right?
And you do not want to touch them, handle them, or eat them.
Well, you don't want to stand under them at the wrong time.
Right.
It's like, so danger trees. And then her other book that I just read is called Gulp. And it's a journey down the Alimentary Canal.
Oh, that should be fun. Okay, I like Packing for Mars, so
yeah, well,
maybe I need to look at that.
She's so entertaining, and I really enjoy her books, the way that she explains things. And I think Gulp was probably one of the wittiest books I've read of hers to date. And then the other nonfiction that I just recently read was The Body by Bill Bryson, which it starts with talking about how the outer layer of our skin is all dead cells.
Now I get it, yes.
Right?
Okay.
And he goes from the outside in. So I guess I've been kind of on a human biology kick. And then I've read, in other stuff, I recently read a book called On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. He's a poet, but he wrote this as a novel, but it's a letter to his mother that comes across very much like a memoir. So it's the prose is lovely in this thing. And then the other thing I'll tell you about that I wrote that I read that I really enjoyed recently was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. And it's a middle grade, it's long. It's Kwame Mbalia who wrote it. But it takes all of the legends from Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox and John Henry and Big John and the flying people and everything, and puts that all together as this mythical quest that this kid goes on. And it's really well done. Really well done. Enjoyed it very much.
I have to look for those.
How about you?
A lot of nonfiction. I don't know if I talked to you about The Demon of Unrest. It's Erik Larson. So I love Erik Larson anyway. He wrote Devil in the White City and In the Garden of Beasts. And this is the takes things from the Republican Convention of 1860, where Lincoln is nominated, up to Sumter, from the point of view of the various participants in Charleston and the garrison at Sumter. And I know enough to know when he's on point. He exhaustively documents this with letters written by the actual people and dispatches from Sumter. I think some of the way he presents it makes it seem more ego-driven than I think some of it was. But what he gets across, which I've always believed, is that Lincoln and most of the politicians in the North really did not understand the Southern mind, and had a complete disregard for the intensity of the hatred of the South for anything north of the Mason-Dixon. And it wasn't just, we don't agree, we don't like you. This was, going back a couple of generations, a deep, visceral hatred, which I kind of knew existed. He really brings that out in the writings of some of the more firebrand type secessionists. They were not nice people by our standards, by any means, and really saw themselves as the extension of British aristocracy and royalty, peerage, into the South. And that same nobility mindset, we're on top and everybody else exists to serve us.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. That goes right along with, yeah.
And so it's very effective. And then the descriptions of the plight of the garrison, the lack of supplies, the difficulties that Anderson faced as commander, and just the total lack of direction and support from his superiors. They just left him hanging there to make up his own mind. And it was fascinating. And then kind of follow on to that is American Nations, which has been out for a number of years. But it looks at, and I don't agree with this guy's premise, but according to him, the deep divisions that we're seeing in the country are not new. I already understood that. But they all spring from the waves of colonization of when people arrived and where they arrived from. So that the culture in New York City can be traced all the way back to the Dutch in New Amsterdam. And in what we would call enlightened and live and let live kind of society that existed in the Netherlands at the time it was settled. New England, and you can still see this in parts of New England, this is my heritage, were idealistic, we're going to make the world perfect in our image. The things that they push, though, are local control of government, town meetings as opposed to being governed by a governor or somebody outside, and education. If you're going to build utopia, everybody has to be able to read and write and understand utopia. And you can see that culture as it's spread across the country. Then there's the Appalachian culture, which he says mainly comes from the borderlands of Scotland, where there was no law other than your clan, and Ireland, same thing. We're all in opposition to the British. We hate them. And that goes back generations. And the only thing that they share is their hatred of authority and loyalty to clan, which you can still see. And he breaks it down into these various groups that colonize various ones. He tries to maintain then that the political divisions follow along these sociocultural groups that still exist today. And I don't buy into that premise quite as strongly. I think you can see regional differences and you can see where some of that cultural identity springs from in the Midwest, for instance. But, and then Appalachia is still Appalachia. Spent a lot of time in that part of the country. I know those folks. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's worth a read. And then I have failed for the third time to get completely through the three-body problem.
The three-body problem.
Yeah, it's by Sheila Liu. It got a Hugo. He's a Chinese science fiction author. It was originally written in Chinese. It's been translated. Different type of storytelling, different style, I get that. But what it really comes down to, spoiler alert, the aliens are coming. They're coming from a planetary system of 3 suns, which means there's no way to predict. The three-body problem is a math problem. You can't predict the motion of 3 moving bodies. It's impossible. Like, 2 bodies, we can plot a very precise orbit, very precise behavior. 3 bodies, everything goes out the window. And there is no sign, there's still no model for how 3 bodies are going to interact as an orbital system. Now, their planet is in one of these things, and so the climate ranges from complete disaster to totally benign. So their species evolved in this environment and took millions and millions and millions of years to achieve space flight and interstellar flight. And they've been able to figure out in a limited way what's going to happen, and eventually they know their planet is either going to be spun off into space or fall into one of their suns. When? Maybe a million years from now. But if our species wants to survive, we have to leave. So they're headed here. And they have, by quantum entanglement, been able to send microprobes here at near light speed. So they have an idea of who we are and how we work and how all this goes. And there's this whole group of humans who think the human race is just terrible and irretrievable. And the aliens are either going to wipe us out or make us perfect, and they don't care which. The aliens are afraid of us.
I don't blame them.
Well, they're afraid because while their science right now